So let me just flip the question the other way, Gavin and Jerry Brown and Nancy Pelosi. What did you think was going to happen when over the last 25 years you let in 10 million people into California that were undocumented? Where were they going to live? Where were they going to get medical care? Where were they going to go to school? How was it going to affect other people? How were they going to drive when they didn't know anything about American traffic law? Where were they going to get a and did any of that affect you? And the answer is no, it didn't affect you. It affected other people, poor people, middle-class people. There's 2 or 3 problems when you have that bi-coastal elite and you have these power marriages. They're on both sides, Republican and Democrat, but when you have the president of CBS is the brother of Ben Rhodes during the, how can he be disinterested? Or when you see these power couples, one woman is an anchor woman, one is a senior policy analyst for an, how can she report on what her husband's administration is doing? So it's just too incestuous. That's one problem. The other problem is that Washington as a group, as a population, votes about 70% Democrat, and yet some of these institutions represent mostly conservative people, energy, the people in the oil industry, coal industry, nuclear industry, but especially agriculture. So you have decisions made on these rural people. All of us are kind of relics from a bygone era, and yet their futures are being determined by people who are urban, living in Washington, D.C., that are far left, who have no idea where their food's coming. So I can tell you that a person in Visalia, California that does not live on a farm, or a person in maybe still in Fresno or Bakersfield, they know about the farm life because it's the source of income for their communities, and they're more sensitive to it. I can remember right around Labor Day every year, Channel 30 used to give us the raisin report, whether it was going to rain on open raisin trays that night. So people were all concerned about it, but it doesn't work when you have a bunch of faceless left-wing bureaucrats that are trying to adjudicate what it's like to farm in North Dakota or something. So it's good. They should do that with more and more of these institutions, break them up. And then if the anchor woman at CNN wants to marry the Obama type of national security advisor or something, then let them move to North Dakota and maybe they can commute. But that idea they're all in Washington is really pernicious, and especially because it's close to New York, that corridor. That's where too many decisions are made. There's too much money there. There's too much influence peddling. There's too much government. So I like the idea. I think it's a solution that's not political, it's just structural. It gets back down to this whole, if you're going to be a seasoned politician, and take a Donald Trump, he is a seasoned politician, even though he didn't run for prior office. In this sense, to build a building in New York, you have to not only have financial skills, real estate skills, building skills, but you have to know how to deal with suspect unions, suspect environmental groups, suspect neighborhood racial groups, suspect politicians, suspect regulators, inspectors. You have everything against you, and you learn certain skill sets. And if you're a politician like Senator Grassley from Iowa, or any of these lifetime, even Chuck Schumer or Elizabeth Warren, you have to have certain skills to survive. And some of them are the ones I don't like, and I don't like their idea, but I give them. She'd never went that route. She didn't run on her own for vice president. She was just stuck on the ticket because she was a black woman, in Joe Biden's word. She was appointed to the Senate. She, as a presidential candidate in 2020, won no delegate. So here she was running for president. They nullified the 14 million primary voters who had voted for Joe Biden. She herself had run for the office and never achieved a single delegate, and for obvious reasons had withdrawn in 2020 before the Iowa caucuses of the New Hampshire primary. She didn't even stand for it because she knew she was going to lose. She had been a city and county attorney, prosecutor for this county and city of San Francisco, but she was a creation of the Willie Brown, who was her paramour for years when she was in her 20s, and then the Gavin Newsom, Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, Barbara Boxer, Jerry Brown machine that transferred political power from Southern California, where the population was, to Northern California, where the $9 trillion in new tech money was, and Napa money. And that was what she was. She's never really been out on her own and in the fires of politics and having to hammer out position papers and debate back. It was all canned. And so you live by that, you die by that. The fact that Donald Trump closed the borders by pressuring Mexico, promising to finish the wall, no more catch and release, no more refugee status, no more Joe Biden lying, that's enough. But we already had 20 million here illegally, and he let in another 12. So with 32 million people, Peggy Noonan, will decide it's cruel to deport somebody. Her philosophy seems to be it was moral enough to let somebody come in and break the law, but it's amoral to send somebody back home and enforce the law. There can be an argument. It is not amnesty. Let me repeat this. It is not amnesty. If she is correct that there are sizable numbers of people who fit 4 or 5 criteria. 1, they are working. 2, they're not on any public assistance. 3, they have no record of criminal activity, and I mean DUI. 4, they have been here a sizable period of time. Not the Biden people, but 5, 6, 7 years. 6, they are willing to admit that they broke the law and willing to be paying a fine. Just like if you're speeding and you get caught and you pay a fine. So then they will be given a brief window to apply for a green card, everybody, not citizenship, not amnesty. And that green card will be reviewed every year to see if they, A, are on public assistance, or B, have committed a crime. I don't know how many of the pre-existing 20 million people that would affect, but I know this, that if you did that, it would take the wind out of people like Peggy Noonan, who go into a fit of crisis when people say, oh, I can't believe you said something nice about Donald Trump. He's rounding up everybody. Because all Trump would have to say is, well, we're rounding up people that didn't fit the criteria. I mean, do you want people in here who don't work on public assistance? You want them here that commit a crime? You want to hear them that just leaped over the border? You want people here who are not willing to pay for a $1,000 fine? Or you want people here who don't even take the trouble to apply for a green card when they could? So that would give them a good argument. But to tell you the truth, I don't think that would be I don't think it would be 10 million people who would qualify. I think it would be maybe 4 or 5 million. And then you could deport. It would be a good argument for deportation of the people who didn't qualify. And I think it might be something to consider. But when I mentioned that in a abbreviated form, I got a lot of letters that were angry. Victor, you of all. I wrote Mexifornia 20 years ago. I outlined that then, that you could do that. But people don't read very carefully. I mean, there's a lot of checkoffs. You can't commit a crime, any crime that is, can't do that and stay here if you're illegal. You can't be on public assistance. You've got to be here for a long time and have a work record. You've got to be able and willing to say you broke the law and you are guilty of breaking the law and you're going to pay a fine. And you're not going to get citizenship. You're going to apply for a green card. And that shows you that we're going to audit you each year. And that's a lot of stuff that people won't do. And the other thing about Peggy Noonan is, I don't want to be ad hominem, but she has this bad tendency when there's an ascendant issue, and her sensory apparatus thinks that it's popular, like when Donald Trump won in 2016. She wrote a series of, remember those op-eds about the people, and he was empathetic. And these are the people who belong somewhere. They're just not nowhere people. They're tied and they're rooted and they've been forgotten. And Donald Trump appealed. And then when Donald Trump, the Russian collusion and all that went after him, then he's screwed. The same thing about immigration. Well, this, what happened at Martha's Vineyard, and 10,000 people a day is out of hand, and Donald Trump did something. But man, these ICE demonstrations, everybody's angry. His polls went down to 53% support on immigration. I better write an op-ed. That's not a good thing to do. If you want to write you shouldn't care about public opinion, but if you're going to write an op-ed and you do care about public opinion, it's better to be on the wrong side of it, because that gives people something to think about, not just to pile on with this. And that's what she does. She adjudicates what's the majority position, and then she's very afraid that her positions might incur wrath or alienation or isolation from people that she feels it's essential to be on good terms with. And we know who those people are. That's the Washington, New York elite, cultural elite, literary elite, political elite, corporate elite. And I want them to understand the brutal bargain that they rejected their homeland for whatever reason, and they chose to come to our country, and they were guests when they came. And they don't criticize the country that they want to live in and romanticize by waving a Mexican flag in LA of the country they rejected while burning the flag of the country they under no circumstances want to leave. There's another problem, and that is the Democratic Party has given the wrong messages. So we have first and second generation immigrants, many of them citizens, and second, and they come over here, and I'm thinking of Mr. Zoran Mondami, or Ilhan Omar was an immigrant. He's an immigrant. Some of the members of the squad are first or second generation, and they immediately come over to this country from wretched places. Remember what Omar said? Things were much better in Somalia, and they weren't as bad. I looked how dirty it was here, or we didn't have a dictator in Somalia. That's the wrong attitude for an immigrant. It's a wrong attitude to go into a soccer game in the Coliseum in LA and see the crowd rooting for the Mexican team, not the American team. So something's gone wrong with the whole thing, and it's because of numbers and no civic education and no legality. And I can tell you that the old immigrant communities, whether they were Japanese or Mexican, they were so patriotic and happy to be here and assimilated and integrated and intermarried. And this whole salad bowl tribalism is just fatal when you get massive numbers of unaudited immigrants from very impoverished places who come over here as economic refugees. I mentioned yesterday, I had to go into a local pharmacy, and I just said to myself, I have to get a simple prescription related to this sinus problem I've had. And I can tell you that there will be a line, and the amount of time that will take in line will be predicated on whether the person speaks English and is a citizen. And I can tell you that if you're not a citizen and you have Medi-Cal cards and various things and false identities, as many do, it's going to hold up the entire line. And it did. I was there for about 35 minutes. And each time a person came ahead of me that spoke English, was clearly a citizen, pulled out their card or their ID, or they had it in file, bam, 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 they were out. So a lot of things we don't talk about is all of the impediments that massive illegal immigration imposes on a society. Fox News almost, if you read the New York Post or Fox News, all they do is just kind of chronicle what the other media will not. High-profile DUI wrecks where an illegal alien kills somebody drunk and leaves the scene of the accident. 50% of all wrecks in Los Angeles, the person leaves the scene of the accident. I have been in a wreck with my daughter, who was 12 at the time, of an illegal alien who ran a stop sign and broadsided me and flipped his I was lucky in a pickup truck, and he ran, and I ran after him and detained him for the police. But the point is, the first thing he did is he ran. And I have said before in this program, I must have, in the last 50 years that I can remember, there has to be at least 6 to 7 incidents where somebody went airborne on the side of the road, drunk on a Sunday or Saturday afternoon, took out 6 rows of vines, maybe 3 vines per row, 20 or 30 vines, or tore out a young plum tree orchard, woke up drunk, left the scene of the accident. I called the police. Police came out, towed the car. I could not come impound it. Tried one time. Police threatened to arrest me if I didn't break the chain. And there were no consequences. No one ever paid me. No one ever said, you've lost $20,000 worth of damage. This person's illegal. I've told the highway patrol, he's out there hiding in the vineyard. Oh, I don't know if you're right or not. I'm done. Everybody's done with that in California. They're tired of it, and because we have a Mexican American minority population that is a majority of the minorities, most of these things are now happening not to the so-called Anglo community, but to the Mexican American community. When you read the paper about an illegal alien running a stop sign in Fresno County and killing somebody, tragically, it's a Mexican American driver who is the recipient of that illegality. And the same thing is true on violent assaults or all sorts of things. So the left is impervious to that, but that's why the Mexican American community voted for Trump, or at least split down the middle, because they were the ones on the receiving end of liberal white piety. And the liberal whites who wanted open borders were not going to experience their ideology firsthand. It was going to be some poor guy in Madera or Sanger or Reedley that did it. They're incoherent, and people are sick of them. And because we live in California, and because these lunatics have been in control of our energy policy, what did they give us? They gave us 1/4 of all state residents cannot pay their Southern California Edison, but the predominant power company, PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, they cannot pay their power bills, or they won't pay, and they can't have their power cut off if they don't. So the result is that you've got to have the highest rates in the country, in part to subsidize two different phenomena, and they're related. Number one, renewable wind turbines, solar panel farms, very inefficient, must be subsidized, very costly per kilowatt, and too costly per kilowatt that 1/4 of the population won't pay their power bill or can't, and therefore the people who can have to subsidize it. That's what the left gave us. And now all of a sudden, when Kim talks about the climate right, she's saying, no mas, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to try something different. We're going to try to get clean burning natural gas, nuclear power, especially for the AI revolution coming. Everybody wants to go on their little laptop and go to Grok or something to do this. That takes a lot of energy, it turns out, and you need energy. And the reason we're going to do this is not because of you or me, Jack, or our listeners. We don't have influence. It's because the trillionaire people in Silicon Valley want to make money, and they know that AI is critical to their fortunes and to their countries in a deathly rival race with the Chinese. And to do this, we need energy, and to do it, solar and wind don't cut it. So they're talking about smaller nuclear reactors, natural gas. They're thinking of anything. And they're very influential people, and they're very powerful, and they were on the left. So we'll see some big changes. We'll see some big changes. It just reminds everybody that Trump is waging, whether you like him or not, a multifaceted, multi-front cultural, political, economic, social, military revolution, political revolution. And it affects every aspect of our life, and that's why we have the hysteria. It's not just immigration, it's not just energy, it's not just the universities, it's the sources of the progressive power. It's the foundations. It's the way the universities indoctrinate people. It's PBS, it's NPR, it's the network news. It is the silk stocking law firm. So he's going after all of them, not going after them in a vengeful fashion, but making them follow the rule. One of the reasons it's popular, he didn't just destroy the number of Trumpers, he destroyed the Democratic Party. He put them into a state of madness, and they exposed who they are into the nth degree in their hatred of him. If he's for closed borders, Jack, and legal only, then we're for championing child molesting illegal aliens. That's what we're for. If he thinks only biological women should be in sports, then we're for the most masculine woman that we can find with testicles and testosterone. Whatever he is for, we're going to be 10 times more against. And that goes into lunacy. And that's what like some addict that's fixated on that drug. They can't stop it. That's where it is. The only good thing about these people is on the left, a lot of them some of them are hard ideologues, but a lot of them don't believe in anything. So if you tell them that Z or theirs or them or on the bottom of their email no longer gets you money or promotion, they will drop that as quick as you can. I've noticed that, Jack. Have you?
Yeah. Where is it gone? Yeah, where is she?
They've disappeared.
Yeah.
My pronouns are